Hello, everybody. We are back with another live stream on Neutrality Studies. My name is Pascal Lota, and I am joined today by my colleague, Stanislav Krapivnik. Here we go. Stas, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Always great having you because you are bringing us a couple of insights from the Russian side of things, and maybe the most important one to talk about today on this February 3rd is the build up in front of Iran. The US ships, I had a live stream about that yesterday, but people who pointed out, like they used to have bigger buildups back in 2012 and before, but everything looks extremely scary at the moment. What are you making out of this, and what do you think is Russia's position?
Well, one thing I guess you could say about this is a great way to get Epstein off the front pages. Great American tradition. I mean, got Monica Lewinsky off the front pages by bombing. Clinton bombed Iraq. Well, they were bombing Iraq for about 10 years, so it's just whatever is expedient to get whatever problems America had or American presidents had off the front pages. As we know, there's like 3 million files that email files that were posted with Epstein. And so the interesting part is what the American uh, 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 the state, not the State Department, the Justice Department said, we did not post images of child porn. We did not post images of death, dead bodies, murder, torture, and so on. Not that they don't exist, they didn't
Right.
post those images. So when you read between the lines, you got to go, holy shit. And
Those
cannibalism, and I mean, just you take the whole range of depravity, and yeah, they didn't post that because it's either ongoing investigations, which doesn't mean anything. Ongoing investigations will never go anywhere, but it's a good way to cover things up. And another thing interesting is they actually posted quite a few details of the victims, which
did
they're not
they?
supposed to do, and they redacted the names of some of the people that were involved.
Well, so okay, this is like, but one thing though, like the Epstein files were now released after this buildup with Iran already happened, right? Or
Hmm.
while it was underway. Do you think they're actually connected, these two? Do you think this was planned? But because according to what I've read on Twitter and so on, this was done because Senator Messi apparently lobbied so much for this. At least that's what he is claiming. I have no
Hmm.
idea whether this is actually to his credit or not. But yeah, what do you make out of the timing of this coming like basically into the Iran crisis?
Well, there was also Marjorie Taylor Greene and actually several other senators that lobbied hard on this, and yeah, they pushed through against Trump, who was obviously blocking it. And Trump's all over these emails also, and there's some very disturbing things said about. I mean, almost the entire Western elite. I mean, Stephen Hawkins was taking part in this. Yes, the guy that was paralyzed. That's quadriplegic. He was, I guess, just going for the voyeur portion of it. I mean, this is the entire Western elite, with very few exceptions, and including from the Russian side, some of the opposition figures,
Mhm.
like Ilya Pomarov, who was a member of parliament, uh, went to some convention. He was a liberal member of parliament. Went to some convention in the U.S. and decided just to stay there and take part in all these group hugs on how to overthrow the Russian government. And he's now a Ukrainian politician. So Saakashvili after he wasn't needed in Georgia.
Yeah.
But the point here too is, for partially, I think the timing may be associated with this because it's if it goes bad enough, this is a great way to get it off the front lines. We're at war, or rather, I've solved another war by bombing another country again, and I'll just declare victory and peace, and I'll have 9 wars under my belt, Mr. Trump. But there's also the point that I mean, it's Epstein was obviously Mossad. I mean that's
Mm.
highly likely, especially considering he was a lot more than just a pimp. He was everywhere. He was the front man leading the negotiations between Israel and the Ivory Coast, between Israel and Mongolia. He had his hands in the pot with a lot of the European politicians. He was working actively with the Russian opposition, non-systemic opposition. That's basically the people that just want to overthrow a government, not replace it by votes because they can't, but to overthrow it with a overthrow the government. He was everywhere. This guy, you start looking at these emails and the people he had. He wasn't just a pimp. He was quite literally the shadow diplomat,
Right.
frontline diplomat for Israel. Now, having said that, the British press as of yesterday, and I think the New York Times has started picking this up, are trying to drop this all off that Epstein was a Soviet slash Russian. They all call it KGB, even though the KGB hasn't existed since 1991. Asset, and these girls, the victims, were all really agents of Russia. These honey trap agents. These 12, 13-year-old girls that he was bringing in from all over the world.
So wait,
Uh,
wait, they're now trying to reframe everything as don't look at Israel, don't look at the United States. It's all the fault of who else could it be? The Russians. It's
of course,
Moscow.
of course.
Epstein is basically a Moscow agent. Are they actually
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
do that? I haven't seen it yet.
yeah. Absolutely. No, first such article came out in the London Times.
Wow.
And then it started going off, from that. The London Times, once upon a time, the London Times was something actually somewhat credible. And even the Guardian was somewhat credible. None of them are credible anymore. Not after the Guardian stopped being credible after it was rated by MI5 back around 2006, 2007. And then I think they got the message that, here's the playlist of whom you can and cannot, or what you can and cannot say, and they got on board real quick. But yeah, they're now running that to get all of this, well, not off the front pages, but turned in the direction they want. The ultimate thing to get anything off the front pages, of course, is war. It has been always for the U.S. for decades now. I won't say always, but it has been for decades. You got a problem, you can go bomb somebody, and that'll be the frontline news.
Yeah, I mean, this is we've seen this several times, right? And we see how then certainly certain narratives have to be managed, and how much the United States hated and actually learned from the Vietnam War, right? Where mass
Right,
protests managed to then grab the headlines, and that together basically really put an end to to the way in which they could engage. But the weird thing about the coincidence between the Epstein file release and Iran, to me, is again that Iran was already on the way. It was, I mean, this had been building up, and right, and the
right,
we've seen, of course, 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, how there was this first regime change approach uh, with the internal protests, the fomenting of the protests, and shooting of people on both sides. I mean, basically a Maidan approach at getting the regime out. We know by now that a good part of this failed because Iran, with the help of Russia, managed to jam the Starlink dishes, right, and then therefore destroy the coordination, because of course this has to be coordinated, because organically people just don't rise up that violently. But what do you make out of this, of the coincidence that this is intervening now, basically the Epstein files? Is it probably just really just coincidence that it's happening at the same time?
It may be coincidence. It may be pre-planned. Either way, Iran was on the map.
Yeah.
Uh, it's the Israelis want it. The Americans will execute it. Look, as far as you're right, but the key point though with the Russians, Russian equipment wasn't it just jammed Starlink. It also located the signal where the signal was being picked up. So the end user's equipment. So they were able to round up 800 people who were basically the sponsors, well, not the sponsors, but the organizers of these protests. How much of their network has the U.S. Burned up for this? I don't know. I'm sure they still have agents. They and the Israelis still have agents working. I'm quite worried about what's happening in the Caucasus right now. And I'll tell you this: as part of all this, first of all, the Azerbaijanis are fully in the Mossad CIA pocket. Drone attacks have happened in the Caspian. Obviously, those drones, especially when they're smaller drones, they're not flying in from Ukraine. They're being launched from where? So, okay, on the Caspian, you have one of basically four choices. It's either the Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Iran, or Russia. Obviously, they're not launching from Russia. They're not launching from Iran. That narrows it down to only two countries. And from what witnesses have said, they've seen the drones flying from the direction of Azerbaijan. Aliyev's wife and her clan are very much in the pocket of the West, or particularly Mossad. There is at least one American-run base. There's one Mossad-run base. They were using Azerbaijan as an attack platform against Iran with drones. There were American fuel tanks that are used by F-16s. Found several have been washed up in the Caspian. These are for extended flights. These fuel tanks are jettisons once they're done. Once they're empty, the plane just jettisons them. So they washed up out of the Caspian in the south. You've got Armenia, which is basically a client state under Pashinyan, a dictatorial client state that's destroying the church, going after everybody down the list, anybody that protests. But now you've got the Georgians, the Georgian Dream Party, who wanted to keep Georgia out of the war because Georgia is supposed to be the next front. And they were going to be neutral and all that. Then they described themselves as passive Russophobes, even though they're making huge money off of the trade between Russia and Turkey and Russia and Iran, because it's all going through Georgia. The country's been spared what the West wanted for it, which was another front so far. But they've been making very, very big strides trying to snuggle back up to the EU. After the EU tried to Maidan them 3 times in the last year and a half. Now, as part of that, the Georgians have just started allowing American planes to fly freely through Georgian airspace and use Georgian airports. American planes, I mean military planes. And yesterday, they had 4 C-130s landing in Tbilisi. These are transport planes. These are these are 4 propeller-driven transport planes. They landed in Tbilisi. Now you're looking at, well, what could they be carrying? They could easily be carrying Reaper drones, disassembled Reaper drones, or some kind of other information gathering equipment. So at the minimum, yeah, I'm thinking as, say, the U.S. would be thinking in this case. What would you use that airport for? Well, at the very minimum, you could put Reaper drones in there with intelligence packages on them and have them flying up and down the Russian border to map the Russian border. That's one. You can use them out of Georgia, out of Tbilisi, to fly south, not that far flight, to get to, and they can easily do this, to get to the Iranian border. What else can you use them for? You can put Hellfire missiles on them and use them to spark a war. Strike into Russia, strike into Iran, and draw the Caucasus and Georgia, in this case, into a big war. Georgians will find themselves in a big war before they even know what happened, even though they're, quote, passive Russophobes. As far as Washington is concerned, there is no passive. There's only active. So Georgia and the Caucasus in general have become a staging ground for attacks both on Iran and on Russia. And Azerbaijan has actively been used at. So far, it's being ignored. Well, not ignored, but diplomatically, it's been pushed aside because Russia's busy and Iran's busy. but nobody's forgotten what's happening in that area. And Aleyev and his wife's clan are out of control. They've signed up to be the next Ukraine. So there's the pieces are in place. There are other things to concern that the U.S. seems to be ignoring.
We know that during the last attack in June last year, Azerbaijan was used as a forward deployment staging ground for the attacks, especially on northwestern Iran, right? That Georgia is actually playing in that game surprises me, but you put enough stress on somebody, probably they will do so, they will allow something in there. But all right, then you told me before that if Iran was actually came under a serious attack, under a kinetic attack from the United States, this would be a worst case scenario for Russia as well. Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, Iran. I'm speaking English. I still have that southern accent, that southern position. Iran. I, it, Iran is it's a slightly smaller existential crisis for Russia, and it's an existential crisis for China also, and I could even say for India in its own way, because India, by the way, has major oil trade with Iran and has been paying them in gold for many years now, going around American sanctions. And Iran is its own counterweight to Pakistan, even though Pakistan, by the way, has now. Well, I don't know if they'll actually do it. It's one thing to say things; it's a whole different thing to do it. And in the Middle East and the East, it's this very thin line of what I say and what I do, particularly in those areas. But Pakistan has pledged to use a nuclear weapon on Israel if Israel uses a nuclear weapon on Iran.
I remember
Again,
that. Yeah, that was during the 12-day war. This announcement was, in my view, forgotten as quickly as it came. At least, like, nobody talked about it anymore. I haven't seen anything about it from either like Iran or Pakistan trying to somehow talk this up.
I think there's been a lot of talks and a lot of things have been going on behind the stage. Uh, Iran signed the convention with Russia the day after it was being attacked.
Right.
Now the liberals have been pushed out. Moderates are in. They're still not hardliners, but we'll see. Russia has been doing a lot of things there, setting up integrated air defense systems, Russian integrated air defense systems. Iranian pilots have been trained on the Su-35s that are now delivered or being delivered to Iran. They're Russian. I'm sure they're probably Russian operators on a lot of those S-400s. So the defense systems, the anti-air defense systems have been boosted to begin with. And that's not even talking about what China is doing. And again, this is open source. So if this is open source, how much is closed source of what's being set up? Second of all, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Iran is not going to be sitting around in their houses, the leadership, waiting to negotiate, or going to sleep waiting to negotiate the next morning with the Yanks. They got that negotiation once. They got the Western loving. Whole buildings were destroyed to take out one guy and his family. This is the Western approach. Iran, I think if or when Trump decides to pull the lever, it's going to be a very big problem in the world. Besides the fact the Iranian government is going to be looking at this as a do or die situation. And when you get somebody pushed into a corner, they will strike out a lot harder than if they have an opportunity to step away or avoid the conflict in general. Now, what can Iran do? Iran can take out American aircraft carriers. Now, people can say, well, they're not in the Persian Gulf. They're going to be standing off, running around somewhere in the Red Sea. I'm sorry, not the Red Sea, in the Indian Ocean, which is true. But here's the thing. First of all, Iran's mid-range missiles are still going to be able to reach them, and they're going to be able to reach them for one simple reason. If they stand out far enough away from the medium-range missiles, then the aircraft carriers are pointless because the planes will be bingo fuel long before they reach their launch targets. I mean, they're going to be using air to land missiles. They'll have to bring in extra transport planes just to refuel them, but all that adds levels of difficulty, and there's only so much you can refuel these fighters before you have to bring enough transport planes. So this is going to cut down on any sorties plus the distance itself. But what everybody ignores, and I've heard this from a lot of people talking about, at least they'll be out in the Indian Ocean. They'll be hard to find. Blah blah blah. How many satellites has Russia and India and China got? You don't think they're going to start playing the exact same game the U.S. and the UK have been playing for the proxy game for the Ukrainians? How is Ukraine able to find targets inside the eastern Black Sea, deep inside of Russia? It's from satellites. It's from American satellites, and they're sharing live intel data that allows for live targeting for these missiles. So the missile doesn't have to go find the target per se. It knows basically where the target's at, and then it zooms in off the targeting data that's handed over by the Americans. Russia and China can do the exact same thing. And plus, it's plausible deniability. How do you know where they got the information? You don't. Yeah, I don't know. They just got lucky. Their missiles happen to be flying in the right direction, so the drones too. Whoops.
Do you think their systems are well enough integrated? I mean, we know that Russia and Iran have been cooperating for many, many years when it comes to especially drone technology, but intelligence sharing is difficult because these, naturally, if you put satellites up there and you do all this spying game, you try to make it as secure as possible. So just it's not as easy as just opening an API to somebody and then they plug it in, right? Do you think the intelligence sharing game is developed far enough to allow for this?
Um, in a way, it's almost like opening an API. With the American system, obviously the information doesn't go straight to the end user; it goes through a filter, but it can go actually pretty damn fast. And the end user opens an API to the filter, to the human filter that's sitting in the Pentagon or sitting in CIA headquarters, and so on. So they can get the information relatively fast. Depends how long the filter takes. I am sure that there are Russian intel and Chinese intel sitting in Iran right now, in Iran, and they can pass that information fast enough. If the drones or the cruise missiles are flying, medium range cruise missiles flying in the general direction, it's still going to take them a little while. These are not necessarily hypersonic missiles. If you shoot enough of them, no, you got to remember one thing about an aircraft carrier. To take one out of commission doesn't take that much. They're like, oh, it's hard to sink, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to sink it. You need to take it out of commission. By taking it out of commission is you make a big enough hole in the tarmac that nothing can get launched and nothing can land. It's out of commission. It's a pointless piece of metal. It's just a big target. And it has to go home, wherever home is, in this case, to repair. Now, the Gerald Ford playing tag with the Houthis suddenly had to go for repairs in the Persian Gulf to Amman. No, I'm sorry, not Amman, to Qatar. So they didn't say why, but suddenly it had to go. Okay, so it had to go. Uh, we understand, at least from the Houthi side, that they hit it. They hit it with a drone. It didn't sink it. Obviously, I don't think it had killed anybody, but it damaged the tarmac, and that's it. And the aircraft carrier is now worthless. Now, in this case, they can't go to Qatar because Qatar is going to be the American base in Qatar is going to be destroyed. America has, not counting these two aircraft carrier groups, America has 56,000 soldiers with short and medium range strike missile capability of the Iranian government.
I mean, they made that point the other day. I forgot who it was, but somebody announced, "Oh, Iran is now threatening our troops in the Middle East," which is a funny thing to say. It's like, yeah, how dare Iran put its country next to U.S. troops, right? But apart from that, I mean, the vulnerability of the U.S. service personnel is clear. The vulnerability of these ships in front of Iran, it seems also to be clear, which really begs the question: is that what the United States is looking for? Are they looking for an attack so that they can, foment whatever outrage it is in order to sell a war of self-defense to the U.S. public? I mean, are they trying to provoke Iran into firing the first shot?
The Americans are always trying to provoke, and if they can't provoke, they just make things up. Look at U.S. history, and I'm not talking about the last couple of years. I'm not talking about when the Israelis even existed, or there was even an itch in someone's arse about creating Israel. Let's go back and look at how the U.S. has acted in every single conflict that it's been in. It has always used pretense to start a war. The War of 1812, about the British impressment of American sailors, which actually happened. But so were the French. But the French weren't the enemy at the moment because the Americans wanted an excuse to try to take over Canada, which they failed to do. And the British forbade the press gang of American sailors at that point. But the U.S. needed an excuse. They used that as an excuse. The American Civil War, it used Fort Sumter as a excuse to get the South to fire the first shots. Because Fort Sumter sat inside of, officially the country separated into two countries, peacefully, kind of. But the North obviously was not going to let that get away. Lincoln was pro big government. He was pen pal with Marx while we're at it. Yeah, I'm not saying Lincoln was a communist or a Marxist, but he wanted big government. So that gave him a lot of excuses to go well past what the U.S. Constitution allowed. So they had Fort Sumter, which was a federal post inside of Charleston Harbor that was interdicting ships coming in. And they wouldn't leave, even though they, in concept, had to leave. Fort Sumter was Southern property. So they got the South to fire for shots. They did the same thing in the American-Mexican War. Because after Texas became independent and then eventually got secretly negotiated into the United States, people of Texas weren't exactly informed until the last minute that, hey, now we're going to become part of the U.S. There was no vote. There was no referendum taken with the people. Why ask the peasants? Where the elites will decide for you, the way it usually runs. Because there was a debated border. The U.S. put troops in the Rio Grande on a small island. On the Rio Grande, set up a small fort, knowing that the Mexicans, because it was the southern portion of the border, obviously, that the Mexicans considered their territory, the Mexicans would have to respond militarily. That was the excuse to start the Mexican-American War. Remember the Maine for the Spanish War. The Bay of Tonkin was just absolutely made up. There was never any conflict, and so on and so on. You go down this whole list, and we will manufacture a conflict. If we can't get the other side to shoot, we'll just make it up out of whole cloth that there was ever somebody firing. That's been the American standard for years.
But if you want to,
hundreds of years.
If you want to drive a good proxy war, because I do think the United States learned something genuinely new in the Ukraine war, which is how to completely, utterly enlist another nation to fight your war, right? And not a single US casualty, at least as far as we know about. And hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian casualties. So really, the political game of pretending that the evil side attacked, right, unprovoked attack. It seems I don't really see what the game could be with Iran, because the configuration is so different. But something like an attack on Qatar, and then everybody for Qatar, and pushing Middle Eastern countries into this. But the Ukraine in this sense, is this great US success story of a marvelous proxy war, right? If you look at it from the psychopathic viewpoint of a Lindsey Graham, right? This is one of the problems I don't see behind what this could be, because here we have the US with US assets in front of Iran, the way that they did with Venezuela. But of course, Iran is in an entirely different game, and Iran already made it clear that if we are attacked even even just a little bit, we will immediately respond, and we will not let this go down after 12 days the way we let it down last year. So no, you're on the hook this time. Can you discern any kind of proxy war strategy?
I think the proxy war, there is a proxy war strategy. It's just not by the U.S. The U.S. is the proxy in this case
Right.
for the Israelis. Look, well, first of all, yes, Lindsey Graham spins a lot of bullocks. The U.S. has lost hundreds of people, all unofficially, of course, either as mercenaries or as never having been there. I've been contacted with people from Fort Bragg that talk about, we so and so got sent, got killed, his family's paid off, and so on. Eventually, I think the U.S. public's going to learn just how many hundreds of Americans are dead and rotting. I mean, look, Kellogg's daughters and NGO makes its money off getting wounded and dead Americans out of Ukraine. And Ukraine, I won't even say hundreds of thousands. We're talking in the millions of dead. And I'm not even talking about heavily injured invalids. We're approaching, if we haven't already passed 2 million mark. But various leaks, various documents, including in U.S. media, have been more than a few leaks. There was a MSNBC story that came out about Ukrainian invalids and how they were getting new prosthetics from the U.S. and other companies to replace their lost limbs. And in the middle of, and the run up in this, they just casually threw out the number of with 1.5 million dead. Whoops, and that was back around September, August time period, if not earlier. So the leaks here and there are coming out. There's millions of dead, and add to that at least as many invalided. So yes, it's a great proxy if you're just an absolute vampire that doesn't give a damn, which is the vast majority of the West, particularly
Yeah,
the
it is.
European power.
They are, but this is the sick, this is the level of sickness that these people are in, right? But when it comes now to Iran, it seems that the United States is boxing itself here into a corner. I talked yesterday to Rainer Rupp, former uh, East German spy in West Germany and an intelligence guy, and he made the point: look, they don't have a lot of assets actually compared to what they did before, and B, the uh, the entire structure is such that the United States really is not on that strong a footing. Yes, they can kill a lot of
Oh, it's
people,
not.
certainly, but winning a war short of just achieving a regime change within the first 48 hours, and you would have to do that by actively killing the regime off, right, and targeting them all, and just count that it will work, and then you still have the misunderstanding that of course the next generation will just come up because this is a mature governance structure and not just a Al Qaeda kind of run one man show or whatever it is. How would they? What do you see that might be the approach of the Americans? Because at some point they either need to attack or de-escalate and leave again because it's so goddamn costly. Do you think they could leave at this point after making such a fuss?
The best case scenario, Trump sends a frigate up to the Straits of Hormuz, which, by the way, I haven't yet mentioned the Straits of Hormuz, and goes, see, the Iranians are afraid of us. The Straits of Hormuz are open. We have victory, and let's go home. That would be the best case scenario. It won't happen, unfortunately. You can. Is Trump bluffing? The problem with bluffing is when people start calling your bluff, sooner or later you either act on it because nobody believes you, or you back down and your bluffs are worthless. They acted on it in Venezuela. Well, okay. What we saw in Venezuela was step one: we steal all the underpants. Step step three, we make profit. This is the same. If anybody knows my reference to South Park, I love the underpants gnomes. This is the obvious caricature of American in general, and particularly Trump planning scope. Step one, and then the final step. There was a Far Side cartoon once that this physicist is writing out this gigantic formula all over this board, and then he says, plus a miracle will happen equals the equation that he needed. And that's where we're at this point, except instead of this gigantic board of calculations, there's just step one, we start, and then a miracle will happen, and then we'll get our profit. And that's their whole planning range window. We've got the weapons. Let's try it. I mean, they took Maduro. Obviously, they bought a general out, as Larry has mentioned on various shows, and as mentioned to me when I was talking with Larry Johnson. He knew the person in the CIA who bought the general, who switched off the anti-air systems or put them down. But and then step two, oh, now we rule Venezuela. Well, actually, no, you don't, because the vice president of Venezuela is not the interim president of Venezuela. And now what do you do? Well, we own their oil. They have to give us oil. Well, no, actually, they don't. You don't have troops on the ground, no boots on the ground, no real control, and then questionable how much control you have even with boots on the ground. With Iran, obviously, a country of 90 million, mountainous, heavily fortified, ready for war, where would the U.S. even begin with? Because one of the things that's going to happen, by the way, is not just going to be missiles. The Iraqi government, which is allied with Iran, and the Shia militia, which are, by the way, all over the Middle East. The Shia, the majority sitting in Saudi Arabia, on top of Saudi Arabia's oil fields, by the way. Bahrain is a Shiite country ruled by Sunnis, by a very thin Sunni minority in the elites, and so on and so on. You want to blow up the whole Middle East, there's already a powder keg always waiting to be exploded. And then you get the Straits of Hormuz. So 38% of world oil that goes to market goes through the Straits of Hormuz. Now let's look at what's going to happen when the Straits of Hormuz get closed. The Straits of Hormuz are relatively easy to close. They're narrow, they're not very deep, and you can scuttle a lot of boats in that area. You don't need to necessarily sink oil tankers, but you can do that too, because Iran's got plenty of missiles, land to water missiles, up in those mountains on those readouts. That had been built in. There's lots of natural caves. There's lots of man-made caves. It's a mountainous area facing the Straits. It's not that hard to close. Plus, if you put out some cutters out there and you scuttle them, you effectively close the Straits. Nothing's going in, nothing's going out.
One of the problems with closing the Straits I always have is that, doing that would hurt Russia and China more than the United States.
No, it wouldn't hurt Russia. It will hurt the world economy.
It will hurt China. It will hurt China.
Well, China can get all of its oil from Russia right now, quite literally. China likes to still be somewhat diversified. It'll hurt China and Russia in the longer term, the medium term, because they are still part of the world economy. And there's going to be a massive hit. Now, oil prices will skyrocket. Russia can keep oil relatively cheap to the Chinese if it wanted to. But what's going to happen? U.S. is the biggest producer of oil in the world and declining. It's been declining for 3 years now. But U.S. still imports a lot of oil. Let's not forget that. Now, oil prices will skyrocket. There's several reasons. It's not just a panic on the market that will cause, because of war, what have you, that'll cause oil prices to skyrocket. I'm not going to say $300, but I wouldn't be surprised if $150 to $200 was the range. But here's the problem. Okay, there's going to be a physical shortage of oil. This is no longer a threat. This is no longer prices just going up and it just becoming more expensive. There will be physically a shortage of oil, because right now supply and demand are very, very tight. There's very little difference between supply and demand. You take 34 to 38% of the oil off the market instantly. It's gone. That's it. It's not going through until at least the conflict, plus whatever time it takes to clear the Straits, that can be mined. They can have ships scuttled in them, obviously overwatched by missile systems. If this conflict goes long enough, or the U.S. does something stupid like take a nuke, use a nuke, or Israel does something stupid like use a nuke, which Israel will get wiped out by ballistics from Iran, so there won't be an effective Israel. It'll be devastated beyond, well, I won't say beyond human capacity to rebuild. Human capacity to rebuild is pretty elastic, but it'll definitely economically be destroyed for decades to come, and it's already bleeding population. It may be on its death spiral at that point. Who knows? But if a nuke or whatever is used and this conflict obviously goes long, having up to 40% of the world's oil taken off the market, that means there will be countries without oil. Sure, the U.S. can supply its own oil for the most part. It can supply most of its own oil. It's still going to be hit by massive price increases. Now, the government in the U.S. can always walk in and do the we will control prices, force control prices, or nationalize the companies, what have you. In a desperate time, anybody will do anything. The U.S. allies, on the other hand, Europe, the EUSSR, as I refer to them, is screwed. Russia's out, and Russia probably, even if they came begging Chelopabitya, banging their foreheads on the ground before the Tsar, give us oil, we'll do anything, probably will still not get anything. Anybody they'll be buying from, the oil price will be up threefold, and there'll physically be a lack of fuel inside the European Union. Now what do? Well, you crash your economy. Now, is it in the Russian interest for the economies to crash? Of course not. It isn't. Higher prices is nice, but if it gets too high, then world economy goes in recession and demand drops. So no, it's not. You got to find that fine balance. This will blast that balance out of the sky, and it'll send it into orbit. There's going to be no balance. This is just going to be 40%, 40% less oil on the world market. And there's nobody in the area that can really replace that much oil. I mean, Russia can pump more, other countries can pump more, but it's not going to replace that much oil. There's going to be shortages, physical shortages. And the number one countries that are going to have the physical shortage is going to be Europe. It's going to be the European Union. This may be the death blow to the European Union because it's going to crash a lot of the economies.
But yeah, so in this light, I mean, this is such a dumb situation to be in, especially if your goal is to actually create security for Israel, which the JCPOA perfectly did with like the excuse me, with making sure that Iran doesn't produce all of these keeps to the nuclear restraints, right? It's such a weird strategy, and now they back themselves into a corner. Do you think the Russians would be willing to actually help them out, like somehow in a face-saving way? Because like at the same time, they now have announced the second round of talks in I believe Abu Dhabi for Ukraine. I mean, do you think that that this is merging these two theaters?
Well, the Ukrainian talks are all pointless. This, like I've said before, this is the diplomatic version of masturbation. It's not sex. It's something mimicking sex, but it's not sex. This is not negotiations. This is something mimicking negotiations, but this is not negotiations. In no way is this negotiations, or in no way this is going to end this conflict. The two sides are as far apart as possible. And running back and forth and telling both sides what they want to hear just to get them at the dinner table is not going to make for a good dinner conversation. It's not going to make for a good dinner, period. And the Americans are constantly, we're 90% away. It's great movement forward. It's blah, blah, blah. This is all cheap marketing by people that are used to cheap marketing. This is how you make sales of real estate. And they're looking at it as a sale of real estate. Oh, it's just a real estate issue. Well, you get a little here and he gets a little there, and it's just a real estate issue. This is people that do not understand the depth of the issue. They haven't dived into the depth of the issue. And they're approaching it as not just sophomorically approaching this. They're approaching this on the idiot level. They refuse. They've had a year. They could have dived in, gotten a lot more acquainted with what's going on and why this war is on there. I mean, Marco Rubio has flat out stated this is the proxy war by the U.S. Then he's trying to act like it isn't. But at this point, it's those negotiations are going absolutely nowhere. Is Russia trying to give the U.S. Off ramp? Putin has given Trump so many off ramps. Russia has given Obama off ramps. Russia has provided so many off ramps for the U.S. to not step on that next mine or that rake. I mean, in fact, that rake's broken. They've replaced that the stick on the rake. I don't know how many times. The U.S. loves to jump on its own rake. Well, with Israel and oil, Israel could still be getting oil because the U.S. is still stealing Syrian oil. And
Right.
that's going up to Turkey. So Israel will probably get oil. Europe won't. The U.S. is an Israeli proxy and Israel is an American proxy. It's hard to tell who's more proxy to whom. But we do know that at least half the U.S. Congress is absolutely on the Israeli payroll. They all ran very quickly to Israel when they were told to run and have their photos taken. So
let's call it a toxic symbiotic relationship.
Yes. And let's not forget that the number one star witness to get Iraq rolling was Netanyahu at the U.S. Congress. So this isn't the first time the U.S. is invading something on behest of Israel. Is the U.S. getting its own policies pushed? Of course it is. Also, it is a symbiotic, very toxic relationship. Toxic number one for the American people. Toxic number two for the Europeans. Is Israel involved in Ukraine? Absolutely, neck deep in Ukraine. The Mossad is all over the place. In the Caucasus, the Mossad is all over the place. They're basically running as a merged organization at this point. I'd say the Five Eyes and Mossad.
Right.
And as many have said, Mossad has free entry into the Pentagon at any time it wants to. They don't make appointments; they walk in. So this is a very historically speaking, this is an extremely strange anomaly in diplomatic terms of how all this is run. I can't think of a single incident in world history where this is like this.
Then again, we must just be aware that everything that we're seeing right now is extremely anomalous in terms of how stuff runs, which is like why we all feel so anxious that at so many ends this US build empire is coming apart. It's just like, the shirt is basically dissolving on the body and you go like, what? Dude, start covering up yourself and like get your stuff together. But Stas, we need to wind this down. Thank you very much for the overview that you gave us. People who want to find you, they should go and find you on your YouTube channel and your Telegram.
Yeah, Telegram is Stas Tudayna Bratna is the Russian. Stas was there is the English. YouTube is Mr. Slavic Man, and on X at Stanislav Krapivnik. So not Stas Krapivnik, that's a backup site. Stanislav Krapivnik.
Everybody look up Stanislav Krapivnik on all of his channels. And Stas, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Oh, and I got a Substack too.
Find him on Substack. Find us on Substack as well. Neutrality Studies, pascalotta.substack.com. Everybody, thank you for subscribing. Bye.
Bye.